listen to what people are saying and react to that, first of all, because a lot of the time, a lot of organizations will put out the material they wish to put out, they put out the message that they want to put out, but they're not really listening. They're not listening to the people who are membranes, because UPF constantly connects with people across the world. They constantly are finding out what are the issues to deal with, and they're constantly putting out nights like this to actually discuss how that can actually happen at the same time. So the value of UPF, I'm a very proud member of UPF, and as I say, they elevated me up. Nobody was more surprised than me when I became a patron. But it was really a situation where nowadays, when you're trying to sort of challenge what is going on, it is very hard. I mean, in the past, I've had examples where I've had what I thought were great stories. Then in reality, I would rush back to the newspaper I was working for. I said, I have this great story, and this is what the story is. Here's the proof. I had one story where I'd met a man who, he was, by the stage I'd met him, was down and out. I had to sort of meet him, and I had to go to his house where he lived because I was after a particular assignment. And he welcomed me in, and it was one of those houses where you have to breathe through your mouth. It was tragic to see this man. And I finished the assignment I had to do, and then he said, "Oh, would you like to have a cup of tea?" And yes, of course, because, he'd been so kind to me, he'd been so generous to me to help me. And basically, he was a high-end political journalist. And he'd won the Mark Twain Award twice, which is the highest political journalism award in the world. He'd won it twice for his political journalism. And then he'd written a book to say that Edward VIII should have been hung as a traitor. And he's sort of talking away to me. Every time I tell this story, I still get the chills. And this is 40 years later. And then he goes to this drawer, and he opens this drawer, and he pulls out these brown pieces of paper, and he opens them up on the table, and he said, these are the telegrams from Hitler, and that was his signature, to Edward VIII to say he was going to put him back on the throne when he invaded Britain. And that's the real reason, we think, why Edward VIII abdicated. So I rushed back with this incredible story. And the reality was, I was told the next day, forget the story. The photographs I'd taken of the telegrams had disappeared. Everything had disappeared. Now, in those days, the press barons, so it would be Lord Rothermere for the newspaper that I was working for, Associated Newspapers, it just got cancelled. So how do you overcome things like this? This is what's happening now. And as I say, the reality is that the atmosphere has changed, where now anybody can write anything in reality. They're anonymous, and how do you actually try and change any type of messaging at all? I think part of the answer is to be regularly putting out positive messaging yourself. Whether it be on social media, coming to talk to people like myself, because with Helen Ashard, my colleague, we have our own television show now that goes out across the world. We also work with Fox in America and NBC in America, and we're sort of the two go-to people when any major royal event happens as well. So our royal show is really designed to talk to people like you. Not talk, listen. Listen to people like you, and how can we gain traction for your messages, for what you're trying to achieve as well. And it's our vision of how to sort of make change in the first place. And then when you're doing, blogs or whatever you may be doing yourselves as well, it's very important right now to actually think about, don't preach, teach. Teach what the story is. Be concise, be accurate with what you're sort of saying. And in that way, you can create traction with what you're doing. With religions right now, it's a very difficult thing for religions to actually get their message across. You know, I mean, the world that we're living in at the moment, especially in Britain, I'm fearful of, I'll be honest. This is not my world in any way, shape or form. This is not my world. I don't want to see disharmony amongst groups. Our objective with the show that we do is to actually create harmony, is to give people a voice, is to give young people a voice. If we don't, then religions and really cultures and communities are going to rise up. There's a growing feeling in Britain that we can see riots coming. You know, there's a lot of unrest in Britain. And how do you overcome that? For me, you overcome it with one word. It's called kindness. It's called kindness. And a little while ago, the BBC did an investigation. They did a research. They did a survey. And it's the largest survey the BBC have ever done in Britain. And they asked 68,000 people, what and when do you expect to receive kindness? That was the question. 73% of people who were asked said they expect an act of kindness every single day. So I think kindness is something that's needed. Compassion. When I'm seeing all these religions, and they're all great religions, you know, when I see all the religions coming together, I mean, if you look at the coronation, I thought one of the most, and I was reporting for Sky on the coronation. When you look at the coronation and the final bit where all the different religions came together, representatives came together to speak to Charles as well. That's my Britain. That's the Britain that I want to see in life, and the values that I want to see in life as well. So it comes back to, how do you stop media bias? You can't. It's really in one way. You can only combat it with processes that will really create traction for people. And that's partly, you know, where we come from as well. So part of our onward service, our bigger service, is to create traction for individuals, for organizations, for charities, for religions. Because it is very important nowadays that everybody gets a fair hearing, everybody gains values from this, and everybody respects everybody else. Because there's so much misinformation going on. You know, at the moment, I'm involved in something I can't even tell you about, but it's all happening with Israel and a Middle Eastern country, and there are huge issues that are sort of going on behind the scenes. So when you're trying to create the right type of messaging, be truthful, be concise, be heartfelt. Because that is what gains traction. That's what teaches people that they want to listen to. But as I say, the biggest thing of the lot is that, you know, for an organisation or religion, putting out messaging, putting out questions, questionnaires on what the people want in Britain, I think is very important as well. Because, you know, a lot of the time, when I look at media organisations, I think a lot of the time, yes, there is bias. They don't like it being said because it goes against, you know, the BBC agenda, but there are biases in all sorts of areas. How do you change that at times? You change it through constant messaging yourself about what are your beliefs, what are the beliefs of the religion, what are the beliefs of the organisation. Creating regular promotions, whether it be blogs, just writing you know, on social media is very important, because the more you write, the higher up you come on Google anyway, especially if you're on YouTube. And it's a very good way of actually highlighting the values and moving forward the messages as well. So I think, you know, it is a very hard subject to talk about, because I would like the perfect world. I want the perfect media as well. I know how scurrilous we are. You know, I used to be scurrilous myself. You know, and trying to be able to beat the opposition. Nowadays, my role, Helena's role, the job of our Royally Rich Lifestyle show, the job of UPF as well, is to have events like this to connect with people as well, and listen intentionally to what the opinions are, and then value those issues as well at the same time. So I hope I haven't bored you, and that you know, I've tried to give you a little insight into you know, newspapers, media in general. We're good people, I would finally say. We are good people. You know, we've got good hearts. Sometimes we take ourselves a little bit too seriously, but in reality, we really always try to do the right thing. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Ian. It's a voice of long experience. So I'd like to turn now to Peter Zora. Peter will be joining us online from Austria. Peter Zora is a Vienna-based journalist, media analyst, and committed defender of freedom of religion or belief. He co-founded the Forum for Religious Freedom Europe, or FOREF, and has served as the executive director since its formal establishment in 2005. He's participated in many international conferences, fact-finding missions, advocacy campaigns, and in recognition of his contribution to press freedom and civil society, he was awarded the Silver Pin by the Austrian Journalists Club and is a member of Reporters Without Borders. So, thank you. Please welcome Peter Zora.
Good evening. First of all, I would like to express my gratitude to Ian. I really enjoyed your presentation, full of wisdom, of decades of experience, and it's just wonderful. And I hope we can get to know each other more. I lived in the UK for 12 years, actually. Our three sons were born in London. So I feel quite at home there. Now we are in cyberspace. So dear ladies and gentlemen, I truly appreciate the opportunity to talk to you about media bias and how it affects religious minority groups. And it's great to have distinguished media professionals and friends on this panel. I also would like to commend UPF UK and Robin for this initiative. My opening, I'd like to talk about, dive straight into some serious cases in Rwanda as a wake-up call. In 2024, Rwanda inspected about 30,000 places of worship. Within weeks, over 7,000 churches were closed. Some reports put the figure close to 10,000 in just 2 months. The government spoke of safety standards and compliance, but what about the ordinary believers? For them, it meant locked doors, silenced pastors, scattered communities. And the media? Most outlets simply repeated the government's line. They reported state control, but not the denial of religious freedom. In Article 19 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, calls of freedom of opinion and expression as a cornerstone of democracy. As a journalist myself, I know how precious this is. Without it, no accountability, no transparency, no informed citizens. But with freedom comes responsibility. The media doesn't only report reality, it frames it. Word, choice, images, headlines, they shape public opinion. That framing can protect democracy. But when it becomes biased, it legitimizes repression and weakens democracy from within. One of the clearest dangers is language. Minority religions are casually branded as sects or colors. Let's be blunt. For believers, being called a sect member is as devastating as the N-word is for people of color. It wounds, it stigmatizes, and yet the media loves to use it. They just love it. Sometimes 10, 15 times in a single article, they use this S-word, the sex. In fact, recently, the Austrian National Broadcasting Station aired a report of 2 minutes, and they used this word 13 times. Behind much of this stands a hostile, well-organized lobby, anti-cut networks like figures, which have worked for decades to discredit minority religions. Their talking points are repeated by journalists until prejudice becomes common sense. Let's talk about France. The state-sponsored milieu circulates blacklists of so-called sects. Media repeats them uncritically. Suddenly yoga groups, Pentecostals, Buddhists, New Christian movements are stigmatized. In Germany, Hare Krishna devotees were written off as a youth sect in the 1980s. The label spread and harassment followed. In Russia, the Jehovah's Witnesses were demonized for years in state media, then banned outright in 2017 as extremists. 200,000 believers, believe it or not, 200,000 believers stripped of their rights and their places of worship were locked, confiscated, or torn down. Words matter, labels matter. Once normalized, they paved the way for state repression. And here's the question. If we wouldn't tolerate slurs against Jews or Muslims, Why do we tolerate them against smaller or newer religions? So let's talk about headlines. Headlines are even more powerful. Research shows that 60 to 70% of readers never read beyond the title or subtitle of an article. And choosy, catchy headlines grab people's attention. As it says in the secret motto of the Yellow Press, it smells, but it sells. In 2022, the BBC published Japan asks court to dissolve Muni's church over Shinzo Abe killing. And a few of these headlines followed in the same year. Very similar headlines. What impression does that leave, ladies and gentlemen? What do you think when you read that? For millions, the takeaway was simple. This church killed Japan's prime minister. It's very obvious. The truth, the assassin was a lone individual with no organizational ties. Yet the headline fused killing with the name of a faith community. That's character assassination by a headline. And because it came from the BBC, the smear echoed worldwide. Here again, the media didn't just report, it shaped global perception. Now I would like to talk about a few global case studies, just a brief selection of a vast pool of reports. But because of time, I can only mention a few. Nigeria and Africa. Between 2019 and 2023, nearly 56,000 people were killed in religiously motivated violence and 21,000 abducted. The victims were mostly Christians. This summer, in the Yelvata massacre, maybe you've heard of it, maybe not, 200 Christians were slaughtered and 3,000 displaced. And how did Western mainstream media react? With shocking silence. These massacres are reduced to ethnic clashes or farmer-herder disputes. By hiding the religious dimension, the press hides the truth. And when the media hides the truth, the world looks away. Now about China. The Communist Party has mastered the state propaganda to its perfection. Uyghur Muslims, Tibetan Buddhists, Falun Gong, and Christian house churches are branded as cults or terrorists. By the state media, of course. Once labeled, they are no longer seen as citizens with rights, but as threats to be eradicated. What about Hungary, my neighbor country? In 2010, Viktor Orban stripped recognition from more than 350 churches. Did you hear about it? I guess no. And what did the media do? It stayed silent. The logic was simple. Attacks on religious groups are not a press freedom issue. But the fact is that the opposite is true. Articles 18 and 19 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which means freedom of religion and freedom of expression, they belong together. They are inseparable. Two sides of the same medal. When one goes, the other soon follows. And sure enough, when Viktor Orban moved on to clamp down on independent journalism, many media professionals suddenly realized it was too late to act against what had begun already years earlier. Now about South Korea. Suspicion of minority religions remains strong on the peninsula. Earlier this year, even the full gospel church, one of the world's largest Pentecostal congregations, faced hostile coverage. And Dr. Hak Moon, the co-founder of the Universal Peace Federation, actually the sponsor of this very webinar we are in here, was placed in pre-trial detention just weeks after heart surgery. She is not young. She is an 80-year-old widow and peacebuilder. Instead of questioning this extraordinary measure, much of the press recycled old stereotypes, even here in the UK and in Europe. Across Africa, Asia, and Europe, the pattern repeats. Biased reporting leads to stigma. Stigma leads to government overreach. Ultimately, freedom is lost. So, what about responsibility? What can we do? For journalists, as already Ian mentioned a few very important points, verify before publishing. Use neutral, not stigmatizing language. Give minorities a voice, not only their critics. And to regulators and public broadcasters, watch for systematic bias, not just for slip-ups. Remember, taxpayer-funded media must serve all citizens. That even includes religious minorities. And of course, other minorities. And what can we suggest to the civil authorities and faith communities? Don't be passive. Monitor the coverage. Respond quickly and factually. Build archives of positive stories. Peace work, humanitarian aid, interfaith dialogue. If hostile networks can flood journalists with negative clippings, why shouldn't we flood them with truth and hope? Why not? You see, this is why IMAP exists. We are not here to silence critics. Scrutiny is vital for democracy. But scrutiny must be fair, balanced, and responsible. When media bias targets religious minorities, it doesn't just harm those groups. It undermines democracy itself. If a free press should defend the vulnerable, a free press should defend the vulnerable, not endanger them. It should strengthen democracy, not weaken it. That is journalism at its best. And it is IMAP's mission. As Gandhi reminded us, the true measure of democracy is how it treats its weakest members. That includes, of course, the freedoms it protects for its smallest and most vulnerable communities. And let us never forget, when the media is silent in the face of injustice, silence itself becomes complicity. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Peter. Thank you. I think that was wonderful. You could tell the expertise of his work for many years, particularly on religious freedom issues. Next, we'd like to turn to Hira Kruya, who is the International Media Association for Peace, or IMAP UK chair. She is a TV presenter, journalist, producer at ALB UK TV and FAB UK TV, known for creating engaging content across fashion, lifestyle, and culture. She has covered major events like Miss England and London Fashion Week, interviewed top designers, celebrities, and co-produces the lifestyle show Elegance Jet. Hira also explores hidden gems of the city in her series, The London Magic. She holds a master's degree in multimedia journalism from the University of Westminster and has reported on a wide range of topics as a multimedia journalist and freelancer. So thank you for joining us. I can also say that she has a young baby, and she joins us. Probably her husband is taking care of the baby is in the background. So we're very grateful that she could spend the time today and join us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Robin. Yes, if you hear a baby screaming, don't be panicked, probably. My husband is putting my baby to sleep. So, good afternoon, everyone. It's a real honor to join this crucial conversation today with such esteemed colleagues and experts. We are gathered today to discuss the relationship between media, democratic freedom, and the protection of minorities. This is not an abstract academic exercise. It's about the ethics we use to shape our world. My perspective as a journalist is this. The media is democracy's most powerful tool, a tool capable of profound impact, both good and bad. The media is rightfully referred to as the fourth estate. We, as journalists, are entrusted with the unique responsibility to inform the public, hold power to account, and act as a crucial safeguard for democratic values. As a journalist, I stand here to assert that our primary ethical duty is not to be an advocate for any institution, but to be the fierce voice of the public interest. The media landscape today is vast. It stretches far beyond the traditional press, the newspapers and broadcasters. It now includes digital news portals, citizen journalism, and most critically, social media. This plurality is in many ways a triumph of democracy. It has broken the monopoly of information and given a voice to previously marginalized communities. However, this same plurality has created a new, fractured information environment that challenges the very principles of responsible reporting. 1. The velocity trap. Traditional media, under pressure from the speed of social platforms, often prioritizes speed over verification, leading to errors that are amplified globally in seconds. 2. The echo chamber. Social media algorithms are designed to reinforce existing biases. The more you watch a type of video, the more it shows you similar ones. This means that the public is often shown the most extreme or most biased versions of stories, including also minority groups, religious, racial, or otherwise. In this environment, the failures of the media can compromise democracy itself. So, our ethical reporting obligation extends to all groups, religious, racial, ethnic, and social. When we fail to accurately represent the complexity of a group, especially minorities, we are essentially distorting the mirror of democracy. The majority could perceive them as a monolithic or a threat. That's why we need to be careful when we're publishing. However, I also want to see and highlight the positive side. Our focus on media failures must not blind us to our essential victories. We must remember that the media is not always biased, but is crucial for democracy, and I really wouldn't want you to lose trust on it. There are many investigative journalism triumphs. Without the persistent ethical work of journalists, countless cases of systematic abuse and corruption would never be exposed. The press has been instrumental in uncovering human rights abuses, holding politicians and powerful corporations to account, and sparking legislative reforms. Also, the media gives voice to the voiceless. Responsible media provides the forum where minority voices can speak truth to power and have their grievances addressed. The media's positive role is the reason we must fight for its integrity. So, what we must do? If the press is to be a force for peace and democratic freedom, we must recognize our influence and act with discipline. I offer a two-part commitment for both journalists and for citizens. As journalists, our professional commitment must be to scrutiny over stigma and accountability over advocacy. Number one, context is verification. We must stop relying solely on the most convenient source. We must verify allegations and motives independently. When reporting on different groups, we must provide context on their community work, not just their crimes or their critics' claims. 2. We should define the red line. We must draw a clear professional distinction. Legitimate scrutiny focuses on actions like fraud, violence, abuse that are verifiable facts. Unacceptable stigma targets identity or beliefs that relies on prejudice. Our reports must be about the misconduct, not what differentiates someone. For example, many times I listen to the news saying, the 25-year-old Romanian or other ethnicity did this bad action. How many times have you heard, the 25-year-old British did this bad action? Not many. Remember that words can stigmatize and have a power. Number 3, we should broaden the newsroom's lens. Bias is often a factor of homogeneity. We must strive to diversify our newsrooms and ensure reporters covering minority groups have the training and cultural competency to understand what they are covering, avoiding partial journalism and simplifying complex issues. Citizens also have the publishing power and responsibility, which includes the social media use. Journalism's future does not rest solely with the journalist. It rests with the citizens who consume our content, but who also create content. So, what can they do? 1. Citizens should demand verification, not validation. On social media, remember that the most emotionally resonant headline is not always trustworthy. As citizens, our first action must be to ask, who is the source? What is the evidence? Is this verified by multiple credible outlets? We should not let the digital algorithm override our critical thought. 2. Citizens should encounter the hate with facts. When we see prejudicial reporting or malicious labeling amplified online, we should not just ignore it. We should use our voice and the facts to counter the narrative. We should respond proactively with evidence so that all sides are heard. 3. When we share or produce content, remember that we should consider, what is our goal? Does the content affect someone? In conclusion, a free press that is ethical, rigorous, and fair is the most powerful guarantee of democracy and the most reliable safeguard for every minority. Let us, as an industry and as a community, commit to using this powerful tool with the professional discipline and moral responsibility that the democracy demands. Before you publish, before you share, ask yourself this defining question. Who do you choose to be in our community? Our word? If you're a journalist, will you be the watchdog of democracy? Or will you chase click-based news and titles creating misjudgments? If you're a citizen, will you be easily influenced by unverified sources and drawn into bullying? Or will you be a responsible global citizen who inspires? The power to shape reality lies in your hands. And remember this, words have power. Use them wisely. Thank you.
Thank you, Hira. That was very good. Thank you. Now I would like to invite Mr. Marco Respinti. He is an Italian professional journalist and member of the International Federation of Journalists. He's an author, translator, and lecturer. Author of books and chapters of books, he has translated and edited works by many distinguished authors. He's a senior fellow at the Russell Kirk Centre for Cultural Renewal and founding member as well as member of the Advisory Council of the Centre for European Renewal. He's an ambassador for peace of UPF. He, from February 2018 to December 2022, has been the editor-in-chief of the International Family News. He serves as the director in charge of the academic publication, The Journal of Chesna and Bitter Winter, a magazine on religious liberty and human rights. So I would like to welcome Mr. Marco Respinti. Thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you. I'm honored. Thank you very much to the Universal Peace Federation and the International Media Association for Peace UK for hosting this important event, which unfortunately I cannot attend in person in lovely London. On purpose, we didn't coordinate details of our remarks ahead of time, and so you will now hear some overlapping with some speakers that already spoke today. And I'm quite glad of this, because this shows the liberty in truth. This shows that liberty in truth is the true key of these kind of meetings, and shows that we have kind of same sensibility. Ladies, gentlemen, religious persecution is the most alarming news of the world we live in, and yet most people are not aware of it at all. Acting as a filter, media act as a filter, which play a sensorial role by selecting the news to be shared with the public. Within the broader framework of religious persecution worldwide, Christianity is the faith that suffers the most significant persecution in numerical terms. This may seem surprising to many. Christianity is certainly not a small, obscure local religion. It is the faith with the largest number of adherents across the entire globe. And yet, it is truly the most persecuted religion. The fact that the general public remains unaware of this dire reality is again due to the filter that is the de facto censorship imposed by the mass media. Let us talk, for example, as was already mentioned, but I want to repeat it, let us talk of Nigeria. In that African country, Christians are subjected to constant harassment and violence with a high number of victims. Yet Nigeria is almost absent from the foremost television newscasts and the pages of widely circulated newspapers. In such cases, the organs of information become organs of disinformation. Religious persecution in the world can be divided into two macro areas. I will briefly describe them, citing some clear examples, and among all cases, my examples will be chosen from those I have personally dealt with directly in my work at Bitter Winter magazine. The first of these two macro areas includes countries and territories where totalitarian regimes and despotic governments openly persecute religious groups and individuals. It is the part of the world where rogue states are so arrogant that they do not need to disguise or conceal their blatant war against all forms of religion, spirituality, creed, or belief. My example here is the People's Republic of China. About religious faiths, the Chinese regime led by the Chinese Communist Party, is based on a theoretical premise. Religion is a natural attitude, and following a natural evolutionary process, it will eventually die out. Yet the regime seeks to accelerate the process, and it does so in two ways: by infiltrating religious groups and churches to cynicize and control them, and by conducting violent persecution. These two approaches target all groups indiscriminately: Christian house churches, underground Catholics, Muslims, Buddhists, Taoists, and new religions such as Falun Gong and the Church of Almighty God, to name just a few. Often religious persecution is also conducted against non-Han ethnicities whose cultural identity revolves around religious elements. This is the case for Tibetans, Uyghurs, Mongols, and others. Violent persecution of these groups includes a lengthy list of atrocities: unlawful arrest and deportation, imprisonment in labor camps, indoctrination in re-education camps, violation of the sanctity of the households and family, torture, segregation, rape, and even suspicious deaths in custody, occurring daily. Another brutal practice used to eradicate religions and destroy ethnicities is forced organ harvesting, with the regime operating or even actively supporting a massive, highly lucrative and deeply immoral business of extracting organs from political prisoners sentenced to death, and often while they are still alive, to feed a horrifying black market. Once again, the mass media are often complicit through omission, hesitating to report on this vast and devastating scourge, allowing it to persist unnoticed by the wider world. But violent persecution in rogue state is, as I mentioned, only one side of the problem. The second macro area of religious persecution is that which occurs in democratic countries of the free world. Yes, the news of the day is that religion is persecuted even in democracies. Many dismiss this idea outright, labeling it an exaggeration. After all, they argue, democracies are founded on tolerance and inclusion. And yet, how is it possible that the very systems built to protect freedom can instead display intolerance and actively persecute faith? This becomes entirely possible when the free world hijacks the very concept of democracy through relativism. Relativism is the modern and postmodern notion that proclaims that the relativity of everything, every value, principle, idea, judgment, and evaluation, except, ironically, the principle that everything must be relative. In practice, this makes relativism dogmatic, while the relativity of everything leads to the irrelevance of whatever value those in power dismiss. Those who wield power enforce a new consensus sanctioned by a newly constructed legality. Meanwhile, abandoning its duty and moral responsibility, the press easily becomes a tool to censor truth, dogmatize relativism as the will of the powerful, and legitimize this manufactured consensus and legality. In a world governed by relativism, those who stand firm upon absolute principles and values, such as religions, whatever principle and values they cherish, become the primary adversaries. In liberal democracies, societies characterized by democratic relativism, religion is not persecuted openly, but subtly marginalized. Theoretically, religion itself is not regarded as the enemy in such a society. Only those forms of religion considered exaggerated or extreme are treated as enemies, precisely because of their intrinsic hostility to relativism. which is itself constructed as an inherent rejection of democracy. But who can define what is exaggerated or extreme? According to which criteria or standards? And can a secular actor, alien to religion and even its sophisticated adversary, legitimately decide what constitutes excess within a domain to which it does not belong? Here, the unfortunate habit of wielding the term cult at will against religious groups comes into play. Yet scholars and specialists deliberately avoid the term cult because it is vague, offensive, and blunt. No scientific, accepted, and value-free definition of cult can be calmly employed in academic or legal context. Cult invariably serves as the brand of the other, especially when there is a need to stigmatize difference. The term is deployed precisely because it generates consensus and attracts attention. It frightens just enough to dominate and intimidate sufficiently to impose control. The situation becomes even more complex when private actors form a symbiotic alliance with state institutions. While many private actors may be involved, the scenario becomes particularly grave when NGOs, lobbying groups, and the media enter the scene. It becomes critical when these entities intertwine and mutually reinforce falsehoods about cults merely through repetition. Private actors often function as ideological subcontractors of the state, exerting pressure to delegitimize specific religious communities. Consider the case of France, democratic France, in the heart of Europe, where the Mission interministérielle de vigilance et de lutte contre les dérives sectaires, MIVILUD, of the Interministerial Mission for Monitoring and Combating Cultic Deviances operates, an ostensibly neutral government agency whose activities systematically target minority religious groups marked by theological or social nonconformity. Its periodic reports, MIVILUD's periodic reports on cults, significantly influence law enforcement priorities and judicial decisions. Some might argue that, after all, those targeted are cults, that is, marginal groups that are admittedly strange. In truth, it always begins with the cults because they are an easy target for propaganda and invariably ends by affecting everyone. France offers a telling example. Just 2 years ago, the Minister of Education intervened through a task force tasked with enforcing secular values, threatening suspensions and disciplinary action when a few children deemed it appropriate to say a prayer before lunch in a public school. In Japan and in South Korea, the Family Federation for World Peace and Unification, formerly known as the Unification Church, faces intense governmental attacks using unprecedented means. What is happening in these countries has been defined and is religicide, the systematic assassination of religion itself, trying to eradicating it in the mind and spirit of the people. In South Korea, not only is the Family Federation targeted, raids and arrests of prominent leaders have struck numerous Protestant Christian churches, sometimes mega churches with thousands of affiliates, such as Yoido Full Gospel Church, Saranjail Church, Segero Church, and the Far East Broadcasting Company, an international Christian radio network. Another striking example, and I'm going to my conclusion, of democratic persecution against religion is the case of Taijimen in the Republic of China, Taiwan. Taijimen is a menpai similar to a school of Qigong, martial arts, and self-cultivation, with teachings centered on conscience. In 1996, corrupt bureaucrats targeted the movement, accusing it of fiscal evasion and absurdly even of raising goblins through black magic. Taiji men committed no crime, a fact confirmed not by me, but by every level of Taiwanese justice, culminating in the 2007 Supreme Court ruling, which fully acquitted them of all charges. Yet, the same corrupt bureaucracy continues to demand money from Taiji men, having meanwhile nationalized its sacred land as compensation. Now, my final point. Where is the press in all this? And in countless other cases, the press is supposed to be the watchdog of democracy. But when it becomes the pet of anti-religious power, when it abandons its moral duty and censors truth, democracy itself dies. Thank you.
Where are we? Sorry? Where am I going? Thank you very much. It's a very quick question. The question of conspiracy theories. I've got so many friends who have gone down the rabbit hole of conspiracy theories, and I don't think I quite understand how to counteract these people who are convinced that a line going across the sky is poison, or convinced of one thing or another. How does one really counteract these ideas of conspiracy theories, which erodes, like pouring acid on society and democracy?
Who are you asking?
Anyone who'd like to answer.
I would like to answer.
Yeah, please.
Just because I had the same exact example with other people in my environment. So it's very interesting that you're asking it as well. I think that the first thing that we need to consider is if the person itself is actually willing to listen to a different opinion from what that person has. Because a lot of times we may say an answer, and no matter what you're saying, they are just not listening to any of the facts that you are providing, because they are so focused on on their opinion or what they will say next, but they're just not listening. So I think that the first thing is that they need to want to listen to a different perspective. And then the second thing is to provide them facts, scientific facts. In this specific example that you're saying, it links with what I was saying with social media. So, for example, I had a friend of mine believing exactly the same regarding the lines of the airplanes, etc. And while I was telling him that this is not true, it's not like see the scientific research, actually see why this is happening. I found publications, I spent time to find research saying why that happens, and explain it physically. The person still continued sending me other videos which were still saying that this is the truth. So what I'm saying is that because he had a belief, the system continued showing him videos reinforcing that belief, and it links exactly with what I said before. So one is being able to actually think that, oh, this is the algorithm, this is the social media, let me search for a different perspective because I'm seeing only one at the moment. So to conclude is the person being willing to listen, you present in fact, but in the end, we cannot force anyone to what believe and what not. So it's going to be their choice, having seen the facts, if they will listen to you or not.
Right.
Ian would like to answer.
Can I add something to this?
Oh, Peter first and then Ian? Okay.
Yeah. I would have said exactly the same thing what Hera just said. I'd like to add, myself, I'm on several groups. In one of the groups, about 80% conspiracy theorists. And it's painful, it's wild what is going on. These are Google groups, they work with email. And many times I said, I just have to stop, I have to get out of this group. But somehow I cannot get out of it. Occasionally I need to challenge them. And then what I do is exactly what Hera just mentioned. I compile an article, very well researched, which proves them wrong. This is so obvious that their theories are so obviously way out. And then afterwards, some admit, yeah, Peter must be right somehow. He's saying, it makes sense. And there are always some, they are not all the same. They don't have the same conspiracy theories. So you can catch some of them and bring them to senses. That's my experience. Occasionally we get, pardon my French, we get a shitstorm. But you have to face that. It's worth it. It's worth confronting these theories. They're so wild sometimes. Marco, you have something.
Could we ask Ian to answer next, and then Marco?
When I look at the world today, what has caused a lot of these conspiracy theories is really the technology that is now available and how journalism and media has evolved. So when I first started, saw something like this. Yes, there were the flying saucers at the time, and then some very astute photographer characters would throw saucers up in the air and say, this is a flying saucer. Nowadays, the corruption has started because, in reality, television decided to go 24-hour news. 24-hour news means nowadays that they have to sex up stories that otherwise would have no significance at all.
That's right.
And then secondly, when it comes to social media is following on from 24-hour news, so that they feed one another. There's this voracious appetite to get eyeballs. I love the word eyeballs, because the more millions of eyeballs, the more money that journalists make. At the moment, I'm challenging, not in quite the same way, but there's a lot of books coming out about the royal family at the moment. And I work with Fox in America, NBC, and I work with other companies as well. And they are saying, is this true? Is this accurate? Is this a conspiracy theory? What's going on? And I'm thinking, I don't know. I mean, because in reality, what's really happening is that the books, for example, one recently was written by, and I know him very well, he's a very nice person. I won't mention his name, but he's a former royal butler. And he started quoting Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, as someone who he called a Disney princess. And all the different things that she's been doing now, the messages that's coming out about her, this whole thing. And then I looked him up, and in reality, he's never met her. He's never met her at all, because basically he finished becoming a royal butler in 2011, and Meghan didn't come on the existence till 2016. So basically, part of what I try to do now is balance the nonsense that is coming out with fact.
Thank you. And Marco, would you like to say something?
Marco.
Yes. You.
Your microphone.
Microphone
unmute.
is not working. You're,
Okay, here I am. I don't want to take this too long, but I totally subscribe to what previous speakers said on the topic of conspiracy. But let me just add, from my point of view, that I consider conspiratorial cast of mind as a poison of the mind, or even of the spirit. We need to respond to that with reality, facts, scientific research, but for a conspiratorial mind, that is never enough. It is always the proof that is a conspiracy. And they can turn reality upon itself on and on and on and on. So I see it as a very long-term question. It's an educational task. We need to re-educate people, starting from our children, to truth, to face truth, even if sometimes it's unpleasant, but truth. When we start with, I don't want to shock anyone, but there is a sentence I hate, and that sentence is, in my opinion. Just like my opinion is important as the rocks, or something that really exists. If we need to turn back people to that. It's an educational task again. It takes a lot of time, and we need to. The only way to say, in my opinion, is when my opinion coincides with reality. The other name of which is very hard, word, which is truth.
Thank you. Thank you. And Neela, would you like to say something?
Actually, I have a few questions. No, something very important. Thank you. Right. I would like to ask you, it's a mainstream media, so journalists, they are focusing mostly, developed country issues, or just like, are you focusing everyone problems? Because according to my point of view, from 1990 to 2025, one of the biggest attack in Sri Lanka, which is East attack, almost 267 people was killed, and 13 country nationality was affected. So that's one of the huge incident. I have seen that none of you are quoted about that. So I wonder, is that something different from something? Or this is my first question. Other one, again, in Sri Lanka, it's the Elam Tamils. I'm from Elam Tamil. So we were nearly 28% declined in this universe within our population. So I think we are the number one declined population at the present in the universe. So I don't know how we couldn't able to, or journalists or mainstream, they couldn't able to find about our issues. Or I was a bit wonder because I'm listening all of your conversation. So again, in Sri Lanka, it is a very much important island, and it's a pearl of Indian Ocean, which is a very spotting place in the Indian Ocean. So that's the reason why I really want to know about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Neela. So from this Sri Lankan situation, particularly with the suffering of the Elam Tamils, who would like to comment?
It's not that only the terrorist attack in 2019 East attack. None of them quoted that.
Hira?
Okay. Okay, regarding the first question, I do think that in general we need to report whatever is happening around
the word that is of significance, importance, and can have an impact either in a local community or even globally sometimes. So I do think we need to report that. I'm not aware of the specific incident and how much it has been reported, especially which it has been quite a long time. But in general, it is to consider that, yes, we should be reporting major issues around the world in general. And two is, when we are living in a specific country, how does that information come to this country, which is far away? So I would think that different media need to report it, especially local ones, and then that to be picked up from international journalists so that it's shown here. I would think that as independent journalists and, you know, like all the media outlets that are valid, they would want to publish anything that is important for the society. However, we also need to remember that a lot of times, depending on what is happening to the local community, to that nation specifically, and then to the other global news agenda, always news get prioritized depending on the impact that the media team thinks that they have. So then regarding the second question, which was how do we bring this topic into the media attention mostly, I think, again, it has to be with what is your audience. Because let's not forget that around the world there are hundreds of countries, and then it really depends, you know, like for example, for your English audience, how relevant these whatever is happening in other countries are, one, and then obviously you just still need to be aware of different other worldwide issues. So again, it's the relevance according to your target audience, and then how big and how complex that news is so that it comes to a specific country. It's very complex what you're asking, so this is only one aspect of it.
Ian?
Can I just give a reality check how this whole system works? So basically, when a producer is looking to do any news item, he will call upon a researcher to start off with. Now, researchers are just out of university mainly, and I mean, for example, when I used to work with Sky News, I used to get picked up at the doorway and ushered through, and I met what I call a runner, and a runner then goes into becoming a researcher and goes up the scale. And one day this young man came in, and he was about 19 or 20 years of age, and basically invited me in, and we started talking, and I said, are you a runner? I said, oh no. He said, I produced the show. I produced the show. So basically, a lot of the time when they're deciding on news items, the first port of call is to talk to the researcher. And the researcher, I mean, I had stories where, for example, all the problems that were happening in DRC Congo. And Congo couldn't get a good press at all. I mean, they were constantly being vilified. And the reason was that any information on YouTube about the Congo was in French. And the guys who were deciding what the storyline were English. So in reality, they were just looking at what were the images, and the images, that's what they were reporting. And it flows up the line. So I think, you know, the problem nowadays is at any one time there's hundreds of wars going on. There's all sorts of issues going on. And I think, you know, most global TV companies that I work with really try their hardest to verify what is good and what it isn't. But because they are deluged by, first of all, getting the news out first, there's this competitive edge constantly. getting that competitive edge out against any other news channel at the same time. That's the first thing. And then basically when they're basing a lot of their thought process on YouTube, which is what's really happening, that's when mistakes happen.
We have one more question. And it's, what would you recommend for a new religious movement group that has been targeted by hate speech for over a decade and is severely stigmatized and marginalized to a degree where no government official, no local civil societies or media are willing to have any dialogue? And members of the group are too scared to share any positive experience because they are losing their jobs. So in that extreme situation, what would you say? How would you work?
Quickly, just don't preach, teach. Very, very simple. Don't preach, teach. In other words, listen to the people. Listen to what they want to hear, not what you want to tell them half the time. And in that way, you create traction.
Maybe one thing I've said to Neela before, and maybe, I don't know if you want to comment on it, but I saw the Armenian genocide. They had a large-scale movie produced. It was a love story entwined with a severe genocide. And that popularized their case and brought it to a wider attention. And in a sense, that created a lot of controversy. Some of one particular country didn't like it at all. And there was a lot of campaigns about it. But it did bring the issue out. So this kind of human interest story and brought, maybe even as a movie, is one way to gain attention for something which happened a long time ago. Any other questions or comments that someone would like to make?
Can I make a quick comment?
Yes.
Because, can I make a quick comment? I'm puzzled by how will this affect the business model of social media? Now, on one hand, you've got ChatGPT, or whatever it's called, where you can ask it a question and it'll give you an immediate answer. So if that is going to be the easy way in the future, how will that affect the business model of the likes of Google, whereby you have to go online and search for the answer, and when you search for the answer, they make their money on showing you adverts as you search for the answer. So if that's going to be closed down, and we have the idea of asking ChatGPT for the answer, where you get it instantaneously, how will that affect the business model of social media in the future? Will it change dramatically, and will this affect the environment we're living in, and perhaps conspiracy theories are just a
so
pondering
how will
idea?
ChatGPT affect the business model of other social media, particularly like Google? So Hira?
So first of all, Google also has its own AI model. It's called Gemini. We know that Google is the biggest search engine, so it still has Gemini. So I think that you're right that most of the people will go to AI to ask questions, and then they will get immediate answers. I also use it a lot for everyday issues. I just think that all these companies start to redevelop and reimagine in the future while having AI in use. So for example, now Google, when you're Googling something, you will see that on the top of your research, AI makes a summary of the most articles that it has found for that specific question. So I think that regarding their model, they are trying to incorporate AI in the search process itself. So I don't feel that the business model of them is going to be in danger. However, we as users of AI, we know that it's very helpful, but sometimes we do need to cross-check information. AI now has developed a lot and it's actually very, very helpful. But especially in the past, it was doing still some mistakes. So my advice is that yes, use it, but use it cautiously, and always for something that is really important for you, do your own research as well to make sure that you're using trustworthy resources, which is always the case that we need to remember for when we're forming our opinion. Now, regarding social media, it's also a landscape that is changing because now we see a lot of AI channels being created. So, for example, we have totally artificial models online having their own page, and they are not real people, they are AI-made models. So I do see that landscape changing as well. But on the other hand, we always will have the users also of social media who are billions of people like in the whole world. So again, that will continue to be there, and we will have users and user-generated content, I think, for many years to come. It's always, again, being cautious every time, whatever we're seeing on social media, what is the source, and you know, how qualified is this person when they're talking for a specific matter.
I just got a second reaction because I think for AI, for me, verifies what you want to believe. So whatever you want to believe, it will tell you that's what is correct. It's a very simple system of almost cuddling up to whatever you want to believe in your life and talking about it. There is a major danger at the moment with AI, and the major danger with AI is that the government are trying to put through a new bill that encourages the AI to be able to use any type of material and take away the copyright. So nowadays, if this happens, that means then that anybody, that all four of us tonight, if we write an article where we, you know, which is our living as well, that can be scraped, and in Britain, there's no repercussion. So, you know, it's a world that is quickly changing. Messaging is quickly changing. And I think, you know, in these types of circumstances, AI, yeah, I mean, I used AI the other day, and I wanted to know, what's the definition of kindness? And within seconds, a message came back to me saying, why do you want to know that? They're starting to question me. You know, they're starting to question me, and I'm thinking, well, eventually we got the answer, and it was really, I was asking a question really for a meeting like this on how do you create communication these days, and the answer was you do it through kindness. It's communication that is how you get messages across. But that went on for about 12 minutes, and in the end I thought, who's actually using who?
There we go. And with your permission, I think we've now gone over time. Actually, you did have your hand up, didn't you? Yes.
Yes.
Maybe I'll ask questions.
Well, most of all, I wanted to thank all the speakers, really, but because I feel really informed and enlightened by all four of the speakers. I had one word of caution about the concept of conspiracy theories, because if you think back to when COVID started, it was considered a conspiracy theory in the media to say that it originated in a laboratory in Wuhan, right? But now, it's pretty much clear that that's how it started, right? Whether it was on purpose by the Communist Party of China or not, we don't know. But it's pretty much clear that it didn't come from some animals. It came from this gain-of-function research that was going on in the laboratory. But that was, I was actually active on social media at that time saying, you know, it came from there. But we were considered conspiracy theorists at the time. But so that's just a word of caution that what is considered a conspiracy theory today can turn out to be the truth tomorrow when all the facts come out. So I do appreciate everything that was spoken about. I mean, for me, the important question, I mean, I listen a lot to people like Dennis Prager. I don't know how many people know Dennis Prager, founder of Prager University, but he's just written a book. He's completely paralyzed, and he was in a rather terrible accident. His book, the title is, If God Does Not Exist, ... To me, that is a very fundamental question, because if in UPF we believe in universal values, we have to understand that if there is no creator, we cannot have universal values. You know, there's a spiritual battle going on. And, you know, there is such a thing as universal values, but we have to acknowledge that there's something higher than just the human brain. There's something higher than just my opinion or somebody's opinion. There is actually a creator. So for me, that's actually very important. And I just wondered what the panelists think about that particular question. For me, that's a very important question. My son and daughter-in-law are involved with Charlie Kirk's movement in America. So it's one last point. They are involved with Turning Point in America. But when you hear some of the media about this man, Charlie Kirk, I mean, those who actually met him, they say to know him is to love him. There was not a mean bone in his body. He was such an open-minded person. He believed in free speech, dialogue. He listened to everybody. But when you listen to the media, they say such horrible things about him that he, you know, even he deserved what happened to him, those kind of things. So that's my question to the panelists about, you know, what do you think about this question of universal values? Where do we get them from? Yeah.
So, to the panel, what do you think about universal values and the value of being a creator?
Obviously, because I work with American channels, so I'm very heavily involved with all these things anyway. I think the reality at the moment is America is such a divided nation right now, and so are the television stations at the same time. And so basically you get what you pay for in this world, and basically now, because networks are fighting against each other, 24-hour news, social media, everything is fighting against each other to try and get any income coming through. They will say anything in order to attract eyeballs, and in that way attract and change the message.
Anyone else on the panel?
Can I add? Yeah, I will see it a bit in a more optimistic side, which is true what Ian is saying. Like we have that component of the income and all that competition. On the other hand, because you addressed many different aspects, I would say that regarding the values and what everybody believes, I think in a democratic system, you should be able to believe what you want to believe. And that's that, and we should respect it. Like what we say in democracy is that, you know, like we have the freedom of speech, the freedom of belief. So if you want to believe something, you are free to believe it. Then on the aspect of COVID, I would say that at that time, depending on the media that you were listening, there were reports saying that there could be a potential possibility for the lab because they were showing that it was very close to that area, etc. I would think that esteemed publications and media, when they're not certain about something, they will give all the possible ideas, all the possible outcomes based and backed up by evidence and science, and they will not conclude if there is not an evidence. However, with other types of being very prejudiced towards a specific topic, as we were saying before, for example, for the airplanes in the air, then it's just a matter of always paying attention on which is the source that you are taking the information from. Is it a person that is just on YouTube, not with specific scientific background, but that they think that they did an experiment that is trustworthy? Or is it a massive publication that always publishes scientific articles that actually will give you that specific answer to that question? So it's always taking a lot of factors into consideration until we decide our opinion.
Can I just, one more very, very quick point on COVID. The reality, during COVID, obviously I was working because we were exempt. So journalists were allowed, broadcasters were allowed out to really deserted territories. But coming back to the point of immunisations, basically one of the Sky channels I worked with stated one day that to be cautious about which inoculation to actually receive. And Ofcom fined them £150,000 for saying those words. And then 3 years later, the company involved, the drug company involved, admitted that things were wrong. But the government hasn't given them their money back.
Can we go to Peter? You've got your hand up. Is Peter unmuted? Oh.
Are you muted?
I'd just like to say something about the question regarding the universal values. I find, I've been reading many different religious teachings, but I find the Universal Peace Federation has a very comprehensive description, non-dogmatic, comprehensive description of universal values. If I'm sure Robin can help you with, getting access to this universal values of definition of the Universal Peace Federation.
So on October 4th, next Saturday, we have a one-day seminar on principles for peace. So if you want to learn more about universal values from UPF perspective, please come along on Saturday. Starts at 10:30 refreshments, 11 o'clock until 5. So yes, we have the one-day seminar coming up. Can we give our speakers a big round of applause? Thank you so much. And I'm very grateful for Mr. Marco Rispenti for coming on at such short notice, and also for Hira, despite her baby, and also for Ian and for Peter. Thank you so much. Thank you. And as I said, if you're interested in Saturday, then please speak to Margaret or Eva, and you can find out more information. Thank you. Thank you so much for this evening, and thank you for everyone who joined us online.
It was very good, Robin.
Thank you. Take care. Yes, and thank you for Raymond for helping with all the AV in the background. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night. Thank you.